All right, John, we ready to kick this thing off?
I think we're ready.
Awesome. So, hey, everybody. Well, thanks for tuning in. I'm Tom Murray, the Director of Innovation for Future Ready Schools, and I promise to keep this efficient, like everything we do in the cohort, because we recognize you've got a lot on your plate. We know there's 200 emails in your inbox right now, and you're hopping on with lots on your shoulders, and we recognize that. So we're going to keep it efficient. We are going to record the meeting right up until the Q&As, and then I will stop the recording for any question and answers. And so in the meantime, if you want to use the chat, feel free, but we will have some time for Q&A over the next 25 minutes or so. We'll pause there as well. But what an honor it is to join you. I'm so excited for what we're going to be launching, for something that you all can be a part of, our New Mexico Future Ready cohort. As mentioned, we're going to be recording this, and so we will stop. We will pause that before questions. So just want to share that with everybody. This way we can send it back out. You will receive this recording as well, and you can share it internally with any colleagues that you want there as well. But I'm Tom Murray. I'm the Director of Innovation at Future Ready Schools out of Washington, D.C. Get to work nationally. Prior to my role at Future Ready, I was a CTO of a large district in Pennsylvania before getting recruited to go to DC to help lead Future Ready and Digital Learning Day. Maybe some of y'all just celebrated that. That comes out of our office there as well. My colleague, Adam File, is a longtime CTO, excuse me, out of Georgia, hired last December. Adam's not able to join us this evening, but will be joining us as part of the cohort there as well. So two CTOs that get this world from different parts of the country to be able to support you on this journey. And what an honor it is to be with you as well. But I want to actually start by turning it over to our good friend John, who's helped make all of this possible, face that you certainly all know. So John, let me turn it over to you. And John, thanks for having us today. Thanks for joining this. And we're so excited to partner with your great state on what's going to be coming up here.
Well, thank you very much, Tom, and I really appreciate this. I'm really excited to see this happening in our state. I've known about Future Ready since before I became digital equity coordinator, took over the mantle, of being the EdTech leader from Purdy when Purdy was there. And I've known about Future Ready. I've had many conversations with Sarah, and last legislative session, 2023 legislative session, we were able to get the Digital Equity and Education Act passed. Part of that does require developing a tech plan. And there's very specific things that are required in that tech plan. And they all align with, what you're already going to be working on with, your overall school improvement plans. So we're trying to minimize redundancy, minimize the effort, and make this all work for you in an efficient and productive way without stressing you out more than you already are stressed out. And I keep saying this, and I will always say this, when you're successful, I look good. So keep being successful, because you guys are successful out there. You're doing the hard work, working with students, you're doing good work out there. And I'm really, to me, it's an honor and a pleasure to be able to work with you and help, make this happen.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, John, for sharing that, for that introduction. And we at Future Ready Schools are so excited to partner with you all in supporting the great districts throughout New Mexico. And so I want to keep this, as I mentioned earlier, efficient. Everything that we do, we recognize your time is very valuable, and you've got a lot to do. So the next 25 minutes or so, let's talk a little bit about the opportunity that you have through some funds that are going to be there for the state, which is great. So why a New Mexico cohort? And what I actually want to do is bring you to a cohort that we finished last year in Connecticut. We've done this in Connecticut. We've done this in Louisiana. And I want to bring you just to a glimpse of what you'll have the opportunity to partake in New Mexico coming up. And here's our Future Ready Connecticut cohort, so you can see a glimpse as what I'll be sharing.
This whole movement really started as a grassroots effort. We had conversations and ended up starting up this cohort that's got now more than a dozen school districts working together to develop strategic digital learning plans.
I've been going to all of the in-person and online experiences, conferences here, and I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot about technology, leadership, and today, for example, one of my big takeaways is the framework for having conversations with people about how we can be better together, about how we can get to that place in education, where we know that the center is student achievement and it's student success and student health. And we do that by building leadership teams that understand that we have to hold our hands and move forward together, because together we can make anything happen. It's great networking here. It's great meeting everyone and hearing what they're doing in their schools and how they can build their schools to find student success.
It's been a huge benefit to us because it allowed us to network with other districts, to realize that we're in the same position that other districts are in, and to gain the networking ability to help us propel our district to become future ready.
One of the most important things was to start with a strong why statement. We spent a lot of time as a team really developing that, which then in turn helped us to set some actionable goals. When we looked across our strategic school plan, what our survey said, and then when we know our students and teachers need, we were able to create those actionable goals that we know we will use in the future to make sure that we're striving towards achievement for all.
Listening to Jimmy Casas today speak about recalibrating and how to look at things from a different angle and make sure we're really looking at what's the best interest for everybody and putting people at the heart of what we're doing as opposed to just the teaching that we do and making sure we're doing what we're doing for our kids.
These past 7 months has been an amazing opportunity for our district and for myself as a director of technology. It has given us a great foundation for our district to work off of, not only in terms of technology, but what we're doing with curriculum and instruction, budgeting and resources, and being able to align ourselves not only with our portrait of a graduate, but also what our future ready schools technology plan is going to look like to make sure that we are providing everything we possibly can for our students to be prepared to go out into the community and society and be successful individuals.
It really is a community that builds itself and makes everybody stronger. I would encourage everybody who hasn't considered being involved in a cohort to put it on their priority list to make that commitment moving forward.
So a shout out to our colleagues in Connecticut there that have gone through a very similar process that we're going to offer you all. And so part of it, we really like, we love Simon Sinek's work on starting with why. The last thing that anybody on this call needs is an additional to-do, tacking on more work. You don't have time for that. We recognize and we see that, but we also see some of the needs that are there in the state, some of the requirements that the state has put forth. You have your digital equity technology plan, the school improvement plan. Those are plans that are required by the state, as you all know, that you're working through. And we have developed a cohort model to support you in those by giving you a framework, by giving you resources, and by giving you this collaboration method to come together to work through literally step by step by step, but in recognizing the uniqueness, the beautiful uniqueness of each of your schools. Some of your schools and looking very large, some of the largest in the state, some tiny and rural, and we actually account for that. And so a couple of the pieces, and John, I'll ask you to jump back in here just from a state end, is we recognize the importance of making sure things are streamlined with state requirements and things that you have to do. And now here's a process to be able to have a support for that to help get you to where you need to be, and using some state funds, which we'll get to in just a little bit. John, do you want to mention anything here and jump back in just because I know this is in your wheelhouse?
Yes, yeah, I did some, I did some work with, with Scott Wright, who is our operations manager, and he's been kind of the spearhead and spearheading and been the leader, with the school improvement plan. And he and I have been chatting for a couple of years about how do we integrate a tech plan into the school improvement plan. And when I looked at how the school improvement plan is done, here in New Mexico, what I realized is that it is very similar to the Future Ready cohort model. And so this is something that can be done in parallel. So, and a lot of the same people who are working on your school improvement plan can also do the Future Ready at the same time. But the whole goal is, once again, have everybody at the table. Because these things are not done in that. These things are done by collaboration, and everybody has, brings something, to the table, brings something to the discussion.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that, John. And I will pull some examples of what that looks like in just a few minutes of how these really do align. So you're not just layering on workloads, but we're giving you a process to support what it is you need to do for the state, but in a way that we really believe is meaningful and robust, as opposed to, again, as a former CTO, just creating something to check it off a list and not really having a lot of meeting. We're not about that. We're about making something that's really supportive of the work moving forward. So at the end of the day, part of what John was sharing there is we want this process to be seamless and efficient as possible for New Mexico districts. We value your time. This isn't just a tap on extra work piece because we recognize nobody has time for that, nor the need for that. So we want it to be efficient and seamless to support the work you need to do throughout the state. So a couple of the kind of why pieces, starting with why. Number one, the opportunity. We always believe people first. The opportunity to come together with districts around the state. We recognize there's greatness happening in all of your districts. We recognize there's challenges in all of your districts. Some of them might be unique. We were working yesterday talking to one of your teammates at a tiny rural district, and then the next call was with a very large district in the state. We recognize some of the intricacies there, some of the differences there, and the ability for us to help collaborate with some large districts together, some smaller districts together, and also to learn from each other with some of the things that we talk about with EdTech and leadership that are really relevant no matter the size of the district. But first and foremost, the value of the human capital and the human capacity is what we've seen in Louisiana and Connecticut coming together to support it is always a top piece of feedback. Second, really around sustainability planning. We all know ESSER funds are drying up. We all know we're looking at those bottom lines. We know boards are starting to ask questions of, hey, we spent a lot of money during COVID on stuff. Did it make a difference? What are we doing about it? And so to help vision for sustainability and help to have some of those pieces for your plans is a huge foundational part of the cohort. The other piece is around focused goals. What we do each month, and I'll get what that looks like in a little bit, is support districts in developing some relevant goals that are unique for them. This isn't a one size fits all for the state. Nobody needs that. That's not our goal. It's what's going to be right for you, for your district on some focused goal areas, which again should align to the plans that you need to do for the state. And we're going to give you a template to do that. Leveraging resources. One of the advantages we have in partnering with Future Ready from the New Mexico end is we have the opportunity to pull together a lot of things from around the country. Every one of our sessions that we have is really pulling together lots of resources for you to go back to your team that maybe a handful of them you were aware of, but to leverage the resources there that we can give you to support the transformation, the sustainability, and really your vision forward, again, for what's right for your district. And then the last piece I will say is that loving accountability. That's the internal accountability where you all know you have plans you need to do for the state, but having been there for myself when I was doing it in Pennsylvania, you need kind of that loving push internally of like, we've got to get this finished. And let's most importantly make it meaningful, not just checking that box. And so kind of that loving accountability. And so when you see that word accountability, don't pause, don't let your heart stop. That's kind of just the internal team of we're working through this together as we facilitate a cohort to bring you to the next step, to support you each step of the way, not as a gotcha, but as a, hey, we gotcha, because we want to support you in that regard. There's really three pieces to the cohort. First is some leadership, training, and networking. Myself and Dr. Adam File working with you to support things to support your team from leadership and some training and networking each month. And we'll talk about the schedule and what that looks like in a little bit, but we want it to be fun. We want it to be engaging. We recognize nobody wants to hop on a 2-hour Zoom just to be death by PowerPoint and talked at for 2 hours. That's not our style at all. We leverage the brilliance that's in the room, that's in the districts, and that being you all, but we also want to build some capacity in the process. Second is some action planning. Support you through a template and literal baby steps aligned to New Mexico's expectations that you can then turnkey for your other plans through that action planning. And we walk through kind of month by month, piece by piece of the framework. And ultimately, you all do what's right for your district. And finally, some customized tools. I'm going to show you one here in just a little bit. We've invested a lot of time, money, and energy in tools to support you with this. So my plea is to not try to do this alone. Do not try to just scrape from things that are out there. We've got tools to support you to make sure that there's meaning in this process. And we're actually basing it off of some evidence and data, not just the fly-by-night, what's the latest trend in EdTech, if that makes sense. One of the pieces we recognize here, and when I go to share, here might be a sample team. We're hesitant in doing so because we recognize some of the tiny districts that are here being like, man, that's larger than our entire admin team in a whole district. We get that. Every one of our teams is custom for what's going to be right for their team. If I'm APS or I'm a large district that's here, you may have a much larger number of people. You can see some of the folks that we've had on different teams, CTOs, sometimes a superintendent, some district level admin. Part of it is we help build capacity and we work with you on who should be on your team in supporting that and recognizing this should actually go beyond the tech department where possible. Right? When we talk about things like having a principal on board, or maybe if I'm a lead teacher in a smaller rural district, or maybe one of my coaches that's gotten PD from the state in New Mexico, to be able to support part of these teams. But we recognize it's going to be different for each team based on the size of the district. But pulling together a team, this isn't the job of just one person. That's never sustainable. We never see it as such. We want to build some capacity internally, pulling together different views and different lenses. There's a lot of fun conversations that happen there as well. So a couple pieces that happen and looking at that kind of demonstrated need is that level of support for district teams to really leverage that framework. And that's what I referenced earlier. When you look at the Future Ready framework, this is one of the very few frameworks signed off by the U.S. Department of Education in an evidence-based way for transformation and ultimately for sustainability. If you look at the different gears of the framework, what we do in the cohort is we work through each piece, each gear, in an evidence-based way to help you create goals for the different areas that are going to be right for you. At the end of the day, some districts have goals for every single gear area because that was right for their plan. Some customize it in a way and say, hey, here's 3 or 4 of our focus areas in the next couple of years. Here's what we're going to be working on. You can see that it goes beyond the EdTech. Listen, being an EdTech person myself, we've got to be real and recognize when we're developing these types of plans, it has to go beyond the technology. The technology is one piece. It's an important piece. But we recognize if we just have all the stuff and we're not talking about things like professional learning or community partnerships or data and privacy, we recognize that it can all come crashing down real quick. And any sort of plan that is just one facet of it is going to be limited and, to be honest, only so useful. And so you see the gears of the framework that we walk through, provide tools, provide research, we provide support for it, curriculum instruction and assessment. It's not our goal to tell you what to teach by any means, but to help us think through and looking at things like how do we make sure our teaching and learning is relevant for today's modern world of kids, right? Personalized professional learning, how the vehicle, the conduit for change, some conversations around there, of course, around infrastructure, across around data privacy, budget and resources, that's a focus throughout. Sustainability, again, especially with some dwindling funds coming up. Community partnerships, the use of space, learning spaces, the use of time. We touch on that a little bit. Of course, the outside is leadership and culture. And that's the capacity building. Obviously, you can't go at this alone, and we do a lot of that work together. So that's our framework for transformation that John was referencing earlier there as well, that really supports the foundation and it aligns with your planning needed for the state. The second piece is also a new and improved self-assessment. An original self-assessment's been around for a long time, probably almost a decade, and we continue year after year to get feedback from districts. And so there's a handful of districts, in recognizing names, that may have taken an assessment 5, 6, 7 years ago. I'm guessing it doesn't even resemble what it did back then, but we have created a new customized assessment that districts can use to support their vision, their plan as part of this, to have some evidence-based decision-making. And what's really neat is once the assessment is completed, and it's a self-assessment, and districts own their own data, this isn't a gotcha, districts own their own data, you then leave with, here's rubrics with ideas on next steps to support your vision and work moving forward. And that's all part of being part of the cohort. You walk away with lots of ideas that have been written by superintendents and other practitioners that said, if our data was low here, where are some starting points that we may want to move forward? And so you're not going at this alone, sitting in a room with a handful of people. You're getting the expertise of all sorts of folks and people that have weighed in. And so this new district self-assessment, complete with the results that come with it, provide incredible information for you to build off for your plans as well. And some data for you to be able to stand in front of a board and say, hey, part of the reason that we're asking for money in this area over here, when we look at our data, it's lower, and now we're basing it on something and not just saying, hey, we need this mill increase for this reason or that reason. We have data and we have charts and we have scores, and boards love that stuff, by the way. Next, we're also putting together, and John and I are working through a New Mexico specific template. What happens after we kick off the cohort is we build on a template. You'll get this template as a team that you will add to literally each month, which becomes your plan over time that is very specific to what New Mexico requires. And so when you look at some of the other plans, some of those pieces in the Future Ready template will then directly link to those pieces that you'll be able to cut and paste into the other plans, so that way it's very, very seamless for you. We're really intentional on that on our end. That's something that's really important to us. Referencing that again, that high octane professional learning, we have fun and we laugh a lot. We recognize the work is ridiculously stressful, and you want to be part of something that's going to be uplifting and that you look forward to, not something that you're feeling like, man, I don't have time for this. I don't want to do this today. We want it to be something you look forward to, where you walk away with ideas, thoughts, lovingly challenged, but at the same time reaffirmed in the great things that are happening in your district each and every day as well. And then some dedicated time for powerful reflection and networking. Each time we pull together, and I'll get to that calendar, what it looks like in a bit, but each time we pull together, you actually get a little bit of time during the session to pull back as a team and say, what are we hearing? What are we learning from the different districts? What's reaffirming of the work we have happening in these different gear areas? Or did we hear things today that challenges our thinking that maybe we need to look a little bit differently with? And what we get so excited about is when districts just are vulnerable and real in celebrating their successes, but also just keep it real with some of the needs that we all know are absolutely out there. Jumping forward here, sorry, clicked the wrong way. A couple other pieces here in terms of what the cohort components would look like. And if you're starting to look at like, hey, well, what about this date, that date? With a cohort, we believe that your voice matters. And so we don't outline start to finish, here's what it is, take it or leave it. That's not how we operate. A true cohort leverages the voices and the expertise of everybody involved. This is not Future Ready Schools saying we have every single answer for you. Just go ahead and run with it. That's not the way we operate. And if that were ever happen, run the other direction, right? That is not our mantra at all. We have lots of tools, lots of resources, lots of ideas, lots of experience, lots of plans for you to leverage and use. But we also want your voice in this mix. And so part of what we like to do is kick off in person, build connections, build relationships. If you're already thinking when and where, we haven't set that up yet. The very first thing we do with districts that join on are we will survey of what really works best for you. We are looking at spring, so probably April, that timeframe there. What we will then do is each month set aside about 2 hours. Sometimes we've done a 3-hour section, but that's been at the request of the cohort that's actually wanted additional time. But 2-hour virtual sessions where we dive into different components of the different gears. We do some collaboration, resource sharing, some goal setting, working with other districts and bouncing goals and those kinds of things off of each other to get ideas. We also have over a dozen plans that we've got plenty more than that, but that we share as different examples for plans that you can use, that you can pull from for ideas from other districts around the country, some of them very large, some of them tiny. And I'm going to show you just one example of a plan that came out of the Connecticut cohort, since you saw Connecticut earlier, but you leave with lots of plans that you can pull ideas from, overlapping the Future Ready framework, again, contextualized with district-specific priorities, what's right for your district, as well as a variety of Future Ready resources, which we'll be sharing there as well. I'm going to pause for a second to actually just show you one plan that came out of Connecticut. And I want to be clear, I don't want anybody to get overwhelmed here. This district also took what they did and they wanted it to look pretty because they used it with their board. They put it online. This is just one place and one way it's been done. We've had districts do it in a simple Google Doc, and they use some images and icons and things that we give them that they are welcome to use. Let me show you just one moment of one district here in Connecticut to give you an example of what they chose to do. Again, this was very specific to their district. So let me jump back here if I could. So this is a shout out to Westport Public Schools, part of their planning process. What you will see is you will notice as I go in here, you will notice some of the gears that I just quickly referenced and talked about. This district focused on a handful of gear areas. They took part in all the different conversations and resources, but for their plan, they are focusing on those gear areas. It was most relevant for their strategic plan. It was most relevant for the work that they were doing. And what you will see is a lot of the nomenclature things that I just shared there as well, but moving from that why, what's this going to look like? What's this going to look like in year one? Who's going to be in charge of that? What's the start dates? What's our status on that? This is something that they keep up to date. And this is, again, all very specific to that district that was developed over time. Again, as a former CTO, I know what it's like looking at a document like that, and my head might start to explode, being like, when do I even have remote time to do any of this? Our goal is over a 6 or 7 month period of baby steps of supporting you to get to whatever that plan is going to look like for you. They then had somebody make this beautiful PDF to go through some examples. This is just one example of one case of a district of what they wanted to publish that you'd get access to be able to support your work to get ideas moving forward there as well. So you will also get a full copy of this presentation that you can look at that on your own time there as well. You know, at the end of the day, the ability for districts to also take a plan like that, to utilize your plan to advocate for the needs, to advocate in the legislature, to advocate in your community is super important. We know that when districts just put it out there kind of broad of, hey, we want to buy more technology, we need more technology, it can fall flat. We've seen that all across the country. But when districts say, here's our plan for innovation, here's our plan for sustainability, here's our plan for EdTech that we're shifting teaching and learning for access and opportunities for students, and here's the plan to do it over the next 3 years, that is a very different conversation than, hey, we need to buy some more stuff. And so in recognizing that and knowing that you all recognize that at all, just another kind of quick example of part of that end goal per se. So let's talk cost for a minute. And this one is really unique compared to a lot of the other cohorts that we've done. And I will give John full credit and the team at the Department of Ed here. The initial cost up front, which is typical for us, obviously, if we're doing a 6 to 7 month engagement with some in-person stuff, which has food and space and all that kind of stuff. Future Ready Schools is the only thing we've ever done that's ever had a cost. But if you can imagine, as you know, doing things in person and obviously doing something for 6 or 7 months, we can't just do for free on that end. However, the $6,500 is the initial cost up front. But here's the big however. Once the plan is completed, you'll be able to submit for reimbursement to John through PDE, and your district will be reimbursed the $6,500 once the plan you have is in place. That's huge because the state is willing to support you on that and cover the cost for that once the work is done and that plan has been put together. John, do you want to jump in there real quick?
Yes, I just want to mention, because of the, we did ask for funding to try to cover the cost for every school district in the state. But the legislature was not kind to us this year. But we had some residual funds that Ferdy, from the time when Ferdy was in charge, and I decided, I'm tired of the legislature saying, you're not spending the money that you have. So I said, okay, well, I'm going to spend it out. And so we have enough money to pay for up to 27 scholarships.
John, that's huge. Again, having done this numerous times now nationally in different states, for a state to be able to say, we're going to find the money to support your district and back it up with, here's a cohort to support you and baby steps along the way to get the plan done, to support the plans that you need to do. And then once you get that plan done, we're going to reimburse you for it. Is not something we've seen in other states. And so, John, kudos to you and to your team, Ferdy, for your legacy there throughout the state there as well. Now we do have we're going to send you a bunch of links as follow-up, including the recording here. We do have a commitment form, and our goal is because we want to get going in terms of starting to get some dates on calendars and what works for districts and start to survey there. And so we're giving districts until about March 8th, which would be next Friday. So you almost have 2 weeks to go back internally. You can share this recording, dissect the recording. You can reach out to us if you have specific questions on that. But we'd love for districts that are interested to be able to commit by March 8th on that. And so if you go to futureready.link/NM-commit, that's going to basically just say, hey, just give us a contact to get started for your district. It's very quick. You can fill out the form in probably 30 seconds, really just to name a district to contact. And then we work on the back information after that there as well. So let me talk timeline for just a moment, and then I'm going to stop recording and we'll answer any questions. And so First is, again, that March 8th is next Friday. So we're about 2 weeks for commitments on that end. We'll be watching those. We've already had some of those come in the last week or so, even before tonight, which is good. And then in a number of weeks, reach out with that survey to each team that's going to be partaking. Part of it's looking at your demographics. Part of it's also what times or days typically work for you. When we just did Louisiana, we had 2 districts. They didn't have school on Friday. They had 4-day weeks. So we never met on a Friday, right? And so as one example, we care about your voice and your thoughts. Looking about April to do some sort of kickoff session in person. You'd bring a team somewhere in a state. Again, we don't know that yet. We'll survey on that. Have a real fun day, kickoff day in person, some team building, relationship building, but also really diving into the framework and jump starting our planning process. April through October, those monthly meetings, and we will alternate kind of mornings and afternoons, days of the week based on what works for the cohort. Our goal is 2 hours each one of those months. Feels like 25 to 30 minutes because it's been fun, engaging, thought-provoking, supportive, and all those pieces. In between there, we ask and we give you kind of baby steps again of, as a team over the next month, reconvene, have some of these conversations, set a couple goals in these areas. And if you do that over the 6 or 7 months, our commitment to you is you will be leaving in November with a plan. And our goal is to then have a final celebration where we come together, we do some problem solving protocols, next steps in person at the NM event. John, I don't know if you want to jump in there for any of those pieces there as well, but it would be a great way to be able to come together at an event that many of us would be going to anyway. John, any other final thoughts there with that?
Yes, for the kickoff, we're looking at, an in-person kickoff. Once we figure out exactly how many people will be at the in-person kickoff, I'll, be looking at, potential venues. I'm thinking Albuquerque, Los Lunas, in that area, something that's easy for people to get to. I do recognize that we have people from the eastern part of the state. We have somebody here from Clayton who, so I really want to make sure that, keep travel, as easy as possible for everybody. But it looks like most everybody, if we keep it somewhere along the central part of the state, it'll be easy for Shell Marie and Aaron to get there, and some of our folks out in Moriarty, but beyond that, be a little bit of travel, but we'll probably make this easy as possible for everybody.
Yeah, and John, that's where we work to make it as efficient as possible on our end. I know when we did the cohort in Louisiana, we started a little bit later, so folks didn't feel like they had to stay overnight a night before. We didn't want them taking away time from their families, and then we were able to do it and have a blast of a day kicking off before we got jump started with our plans there as well. So a couple pieces, and we will follow up with all this on email. We are all about being efficient. And so another one of the URLs that we'll give you, all of the slides that I just shared, you can find at futureready.link/NM slides. I believe that is case sensitive. We will follow up there as well. So if you want any of these slides, you can have that presentation, everything that I just went through. I'm going to now take a moment, as I promised, to pause the recording.